So with our handsome Mr. W, ready, Winston? So I'm just having him drag his lead for now. I just want him getting comfortable with the equipment hanging out with him, nothing too spooky. So this can also be helpful if, let's say, he's like, this is weird, lady. He's like, no, I'll just hang out with you instead. But if, let's say, you were trying to build in long line practice, so like a training leash, so a longer lead, you can, of course, use, for example, a flexi if you prefer. He's like, where'd it go? We're just going to adjust you a little bit. There we go. So training leads, for example, can come in like 10 to 30, 40 feet, whatever you prefer. I find that typically for me, I like to work my guys as opposed to a 6-foot leash, like what most folks would rock, is I tend to work like in a 15-foot longer lead. This way it can allow my dogs to move more at a natural gait, do more exploration and sniffing, while I am at a softer sort of rate, leisurely working behind. So if your babes are not as comfortable on a longer lead, I would recommend to start off in an open area. You will not be using, for example, longer training leads, or for example, if you prefer a flexi, there's pros and cons to flexis as well. If you need more information, you can always check in, but I would recommend if you're working on a roadway or sidewalks, for example, and there's a lot of traffic, I would not recommend a longer lead in that situation or a flexi. So the trouble with some of those tidbits is with a flexi or any longer leash is the length they have ahead would be the same length they have moving to the side. So there have been some really sad stories of dogs being on a flexi and they seem to be doing a great job moving ahead, and all of a sudden something overwhelms them or excites them and they dart into the roadway, and then bad things can happen. But also for some of them, which I've actually had to help one of my previous neighbors from back in the day, she had been walking, her smaller dog on a flexi, and by accident she lost grip of the flexi. It fell to the floor or to the ground, and then as the babe got overwhelmed, it started running, and now the flexi, the big plastic clunky handle, was clunking behind and was continuously scaring the puppy, and they kept running. So Winston, yes, lovely name recognition right there. So if, for example, flexis are more your dance move and they feel more comfortable with them, flexis can be really great for people that are limited mobility or strength, and it's too difficult to rein up the longer lead. And the flexi is always sort of with a little bit of tension, so it kind of reins it up on its own. So there could be pros and cons to a little bit of everything. So it would be finding the item that works well for you guys. Winston, come. Yes, what a smart boy. So like I mentioned earlier, we're going to warm up with a little bit with just some easy peasy skills. I wanted to work on leave-its, which again would be items that are always off limits. So for safety reasons, these would be things that I would consider dangerous, not at all appropriate for playing with. We're not even going to go check them out. So if you've done leave-its in the past, as in leave it and then go get it, or leave it and then go eat it, I feel that can be really confusing. I like to keep leave-its as always dangerous, or don't go engage or adventure with those things. With my weight, that would be where I would maybe have my pup hold back, tell them to wait, and then put the toy or chew down, and then call them to go grab that thing. So weights would be what I would use for when holding back and then releasing them to go grab something. Otherwise, leave-its, view them as don't touch, dangerous, ignore. So right here, yes, so we just did a little positive interrupter with the handsome guy. He looks very dapper in his haircut, and I already told you this morning, but he's very handsome with his little new do. So as I'm just warming Mr. W up, I'm just getting him in the groove of being able to wiggle and then maybe reorient back to me like we did a little earlier. So we might go, Winston, come. So we're just warming up with a couple of recalls, sometimes name recognition, other times a little bit with the little positive interrupter, which is that kissy noise. So let's say for a little bit, nice job, sir. We're going to try a little bit now with his lead on. He's like, oh, thank goodness, you hold it for me, he says. It was really weird. Good shake off, sir. So a shake off, remember too, guys, could be a moment where your babe may have found something, or the environment, or maybe even wearing equipment is being a little uncomfortable or a little overwhelming. A shake off is a way to try to relieve tension or anxiety. So sometimes it's a way to also diffuse tension. So if, let's say, there's another dog and the other dog looks at them and the other dog's like, oh, that's a little bit overwhelming, they'll probably do a shake off, and they'll also do a few other signals as well, which could be a look away, could be a lifting of a paw, which is a paw raise, which is also sometimes like, I come in peace, but I'm a little overwhelmed, and please give me some space. There's also obviously too, like how they approach. It could be an arch, kind of creating more of that softer approach. So if you're not as familiar with dog body language, the more you understand what your babe is saying at a whisper, the less you have to wait for them to start shouting to see that there could be either some trouble or some confusion or some anxiety building. So when it comes to your handsome guy, there's a great book called Canine Body Language, a Photographic Guide. And the whole thing is written out. So it's not like the letter and the number 9. It's the full Canine Body Language, a Photographic Guide. And then that is by Brenda Aloff. And she does a really nice job. He's like, I don't love this gear on so much, he says. So if, for example, he's not as used to maybe, I feel like his harness, it does look quite nice on him, but maybe after his haircut, it doesn't quite fit the exact same way. So he's doing a little bit of not too sure how he feels about the gear. There are some brands of harnesses that feel a little bit more weird to some than others. So kind of like us, there's all different types of shoes, but you don't necessarily love all of them. So there are some sneakers that are still the exact same size that your previous shoe was, but because they're a different brand, they maybe don't feel the same way. They're maybe not as comfortable, or maybe you just don't like the look of them. So for some of the dogs, when it comes to equipment, not every harness is created equal. He is on a harness that doesn't create any sort of restriction in the sense of limiting his mobility or start tightening around him when he moves. I know, nice stinky shoes, huh? Speaking of shoes, I probably should get some new ones eventually. So let's say we're going to practice a bit with leave-its with him in a few moments. I like to work it where first I practice moving around and building this ability for my puppy to move back into my space as opposed to being ahead of me or getting distracted. So the benefit of working some of these fronts or just U-turns or changing the direction is that you're building up the ability for your babe to hone in on you from potential distractions down the road. So if the only time I did a U-turn or a front or some of these other skills was when here comes the scary, there was a video too of the previous student, Mr. Alston. So he was also working with sometimes big feelings and getting really excited because he's a teenager. And then being able to go from moving forward into turning and heading towards the handler and kind of creating this ability to move into your space is really great for when you start to lose them either mentally or physically. If, again, we always make our walks really boring, no offense to us, we don't tend to make things too exciting. And the problem there is even though we are trying to make our walks where we exercise them, maybe going from point A to point B, for a lot of puppies, if they're not able to go sniff and explore, it's almost again like them walking through the world with a blindfold like we would. We need to see more than, our noses for us. We use our eyes to see the whole world. With Mr. W, he sees his whole world through a sense of smell. So if, let's say, for example, he's not allowed to get comfortable, you'll see that a lot of times when the students come here, I allow them to go explore, decompress, get cozy with the place in which they're going to practice. And then I try working focus in on me from the environment. Because if they don't get a chance to get cozy or almost warm up prior to the practice, they might be going into it not knowing what to expect, not feeling safe because they didn't get to smell out the world the way we do visually, and they don't feel like they know the environment that well, and that could lead to more confusion, distractions, and feelings of unease at times. Nice. So right here, we're just warming him up. I'm getting him comfortable wearing his harness, wearing his leash. Well, he was wearing his harness, but he was wearing no leash at the time. So right here, Winston, yes. So my little kissy noise to get his attention, name to bring him into my space, and I fed him for that. So I'm going to grab one of my no-no items, and we're going to try a little bit with some leave-its. So let's see. Grab one of my favorites. So this is just a little old Ziploc bag that had some previous acorns in it, but now they're kind of powderized because they've been dropped a million times. So if you're working leave-its by yourself, pick a leave-it that is not too dangerous. So what I mean by that is if your babe tends to want, he's like, yes, hand it over, is let's say your babe tends to eat acorns and swallow them whole and they don't really think very deep thoughts about it. I would not pick small household items like marbles to try to work leave-its when you're first starting. Make sure the item is large enough that if the pup were to grab it, they can't consume it or try to swallow it whole. If you have a gulper or even a dog that's struggling with like what's called pica, which is a condition where they will try to consume or eat anything that is most of the time not even food or edible. So muzzle training for certain situations and certain conditions could be another great venue if you tend to have a dog that for safety reasons is constantly grabbing for things and it's becoming very dangerous. For Mr. Handsome here, I don't think that's the issue. So, but muzzle training for any babe, I think could be beneficial for many reasons down the road. And if you ever want more information for any topic that I might quickly glance over, feel free to check in. So since I'm on my own and I'm going to be dropping my leave it item off in the distance, I don't want to throw the no-no item and have him chase it and then get all jostled. So what I like to do is I will take a couple snacks, then I like to plop them off to the side and then plant my item where it's still within, hopefully within range of you guys seeing it. I'll maybe move it a little further forward. So let's say Mr. Handsome might be intrigued by my trash. I'm going to just do a quick little find it just so I can move it a little closer. Oh, sorry, sir. So everybody can see it still. So when it comes to my no-no item, I choose something that would always be off limits. If you do this at times with things he should have, that can again be confusing. You want to use leave-its that are always off limits. So if, let's say your friend comes to visit and your babe is so excited and you're constantly spewing leave it, the problem there is now your dog might think the person's off limits. Then a few minutes later when your dog is finally calm, you allow them to go check it out, then the leave it is technically not off limits. So I would, for example, do name recognition, do another skill you'd rather have the puppy do than going to visit. So here's my no-no item. I'm going to approach it. I'd go, leave it. Yes. And if, let's say, my handsome guy didn't respond to me saying the leave it, I would try his name or another skill that he maybe knows a bit better as a secondary way to get his attention. Nice. So I'm feeding for all of these great little moments where Mr. W is also checking in with me. So I'm going to rip up some more of my snacks into itty bitty pieces. So let's say again, here's my trash. I'm going to approach. We're going to get only close enough where he can notice it. And I go, leave it. Yes. You don't want to sound possessed when you're trying to get your point across. So what I mean by that, good shake off, sir, is I don't want you to, for example, feel the need to get grumpy sounding to get your point across because your dog doesn't realize you're mad as about like what they're about to do. Nice. They're going to think you're mad at them and not that they could potentially harm themselves eating something dangerous. So remember that if you start to sound spooky when you're near an item he's not sure about, that might turn into, I'm going to grab it and run away from my handler because when they notice there's items nearby, they get really grumpy and I want to get away from that. So right here, leave it. Yes. I don't yank or pull him away from the item either. Remember that if we were practicing this off of gear eventually, you would not have that leash to pull him away from something. So, getting him comfortable doing some of these approaches, nice. And then have the leash there for safety for now, so he can't go consume it, is important, so he can't fail, but I don't want the leash to be the thing that's physically holding him back all the time. Nice. So I'm feeding him for this lovely orientation back to me. So I'm going to try again to approach my item. Nice. Right there. Leave it. Yes. And I do want to mark the moment where Mr. W heads towards my zone and is disengaging from the thing. So right here, I'm just going to get his little attention on me. We're going to go ahead and approach my no-no item. Yeah, smart boy. So you'll see as he gets more comfortable, I might do several passes. He's like, lady, my leash is so weird. I might do several passes and then feed for the ignoring. So right there, yes. Good job. So he's building up value in that if I leave the weird stuff on the floor alone, there's something beneficial that happens to him. So remember, only your dog decides what's reinforcing. So even though you might think you have amazing training treats and your dog could care less about them, it could be that maybe the value of that treat is not the same from their perspective. Or if they're not going for even the most delectable snacks and normally they're food driven, that means their comfort range isn't there anymore and they're either overwhelmed, scared, or just way too jazzed. So even in all those situations, it means there's still no learning. So your babe should be able to still take food. So right here, leave it. Yes. Good job. Ready? But let's say, oh no, I get way too close to my leave it item. My puppy goes and grabs it, and then maybe they try to start playing with it or eat it. What I would recommend is, this is where that toy exchange game that I'd mentioned earlier, nice job, Sarah, is a really great option, because as your babe gets comfortable going and playing with one thing, you've practiced that checking in and letting go has been good. But you may have also built in that sort of doing some lovely find its from an item could also be a great option. So let's say, oh no, I get way too close to my item. Maybe Mr. Handsome goes and grabs it. He maybe doesn't care, but I go, Winston, find it. And I might build up value that moving away from the thing could be better for him. So sadly, if he's out of camera range, I'm sorry. He was shown the no-no item. He went and checked it out. He thankfully didn't put it in his mouth, but if he did, I wouldn't go, oh no, and then try to rip it from his jaws. If again, that's most of how you're working leave its, then you're not really teaching leave it. You're mostly teaching that you near something equals conflict. So make sure that you practice with items he's allowed to have, having them in his mouth, and then working a drop it or a give, but then also working maybe a find it from the item. So now as you're practicing, you could then maybe start working even closer to the leave it item. So right here, leave it, yes. And build up that being near it and ignoring it, or maybe being near it and checking back in with the handler has more value. What a smart boy. He says, lady, I'm getting so tired. So right here, we're going to pass it. Yeah, good decision. So there might be moments where your puppy is starting to catch on and they're starting to realize, gee, every time I've left this weird thing alone, good things have happened. So then you start to get this beautiful behavior where Mr. W says, you know what, maybe there is more value in staying more honed in on the handler than, for example, going and checking out the random trash on the ground. Nice. We'll try again. My neighbors are making some noises in the building, so sometimes they hear the noises, get a little distracted. Yes. Beautiful. What a smart boy. So, but when working with some of these leave-its, and I'm going to probably give him a little breather. He says, lady, I'd really rather have my leash off. He's like, it's already too big, he says. So for some of them, obviously he's a little gentleman. So I'm not saying this leash is not an okay option. But I feel like for him, where he's got like the buckle up on the very tippy top of his chest, back, and then the buckle seems a bit heavy for him, he might just prefer being a naked guy, and that's fine. But if you're ever finding he's really flustered when gear goes on, his behavior kind of changes, which it kind of did a little bit. He was a little bit unsure about that leash kind of hanging on his back. You may find going with a leash that has a smaller buckle, not small in the sense that you can't, of course, safely clasp it on the harness, but maybe one that is a little bit lighter weight or one that might be a smaller gauge, because for him, it almost seemed like when he was wearing it, if you didn't see previously, when he was wearing the leash, he would sometimes like turn to kind of look at it or gnaw at it. So we may find that he's maybe not a huge fan of this particular brand, and he does a lot of shakes. So, and I don't think there's too much happening where it'd be more like a stress signal for the environment the whole time. I've got a feeling, oh, he's got a little piece of cheese on his beard. That's embarrassing. No one needs to know. Here, we'll do a little switcheroo. How's that? So, oh, it's a crunchy snack that got stuck on your chin. So you guys may find, I'm not saying you have to go out and buy brand new equipment, but maybe for Mr. Handsome, you may find there's certain brands, they're not quite as bulky. And you may find that for him, that equals less shaking or less itching of the harness. If he's typically in the buck, at home, and he's normally not wearing his equipment, no big deal. But maybe there's another brand he feels a little bit more cozy wearing for when it is time to wear equipment. So for Mr. W, we'll give him a little breather. He did a really nice job with the resource guarding, sort of the treat and retreat game and a few other options. And then also he did really nicely with, of course, his lovely leave it items. Or we did just one leave it, but we'll keep honing in on these. So, but his ability to hone in on me versus the environment, my neighbors are doing some drilling and some noises with some of the machinery, and he's been doing a really good job. Two, he and Miss Sophie are BFFs, and they were doing some really cute wrestles. So I'll be posting those videos of them doing some wrestles as well. And sorry, Mr. Zeus is a bit too big. No wrestles for the little itty bitty babies with Zeus. But next week we should be getting a little golden retriever puppy that couldn't make it today. So, but for Mr. W, I'm going to give him a little breather, take a little break, go out for a little bathroom break for the handsome guy, and then we'll rotate through some of our friends. You ready? We'll do one more little find it, and we'll call it a day. So he did really nice for his first day at the doggy day school.